Okay, and then before we get started, I do want to go ahead and thank our sponsors who help us make the Elevate Northwest series possible. So thank you, Business Health Trust, Reach King County, and Seattle Public Utilities. I know a few of them are online here today as well, so feel free to say hello in the chat. Um, and then I would also like to thank our small business champions here at the Chamber: Amazon, JLL, Boeing, Kaiser Permanente, and Puget Sound Energy. Thanks for all you do for the Chamber as well. And now I will go ahead and introduce our speaker today, Domonique Juleon, the Chief Program Officer of Business Impact Northwest. Domonique's bachelor's degree in economics, entrepreneurship focused MBA, and her 15 years of experience working with the small business community produce a solid, balanced foundation of academic knowledge and practical experience. Domonique has been with Business Impact Northwest since 2014 and has worked as a business coach and a trainer, a program leader, and today the Chief Program Officer. As the Chief Program Officer, Domonique leads the team of business coaches, advisors, trainers, and directors in delivering quality training and advising to diverse small business owners across 4 states. Growing businesses are Domonique's passion, and the dedicated team at Business Impact Northwest is proud to have helped hundreds of businesses launch, grow, and positively impact their communities. So thank you so much for joining us today, Domonique. We're excited to have you here this morning. I am going to go ahead and stop screen sharing and let you take it away.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's great that, so many of you are so eager this morning and here for this presentation. I am very excited about this presentation. It is one that I recently sort of put together with you guys in mind and this topic. As you know, Chief Program Officer, so working through the last couple of years with a lot of businesses through the pandemic and seeing a lot of things that small businesses kind of got left behind because you don't have big departments for resiliency planning, right? And so really kind of peeling back a layer and kind of thinking about what are some simple things that we can do that can kind of build in some resiliency. So with that, I will do the little logistics of getting my screen share going. Share from the beginning. I'm going to swap those so you guys can see it better. Okay, just a quick thumbs up from my folks that everything looks good on your side. Awesome. Got everybody's faces over here. So if I look over this direction, it's because your faces are over there. Yeah, so let's get to the agenda. I think we don't have a ton of time this morning, so I really kind of just want to touch on what is resilience, why is it important, shifting our mindset. And then the point of today is really to look at really common tools that I'm hoping that some of you guys are already familiar with as far as planning tools and things that businesses use, and sort of take the shift and think about how can that be a tool to support your business resiliency. Because a lot of times, right, you guys, like I mentioned before, don't have big departments that you can say, okay, go make sure we're ready for the next, pandemic or climate change, climate catastrophe, or the next, just social movement in the environment, or any of those sort of things that are shocks that happen to businesses that are outside of your control. You don't have whole departments that can sit around and think about these things. So I'd love if you guys want to put in the chat box. I know it's a little early, but when we say resilience or resiliency, same word, what does that mean to you? What does that mean for you? can type that into the chat box. I know, I'm making you be interactive in the morning. You can do it. I know you can. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Yes, overcoming challenges, adaptable, ability to adapt when disruptive events occur, whether in business or environment. I like ability to withstand both internal and external stressors. Absolutely. So, textbook definition, ability to recover or adjust easily from adversity or change. So I mean, I think you guys are, we're all on the same page. And I think some things that, when you kind of read the literature around resilience and when you're kind of thinking about it for business and thinking about how do you want to really incorporate it, some of the things that I think are helpful are to sort of shift our thinking. I don't think anybody really put here that they think it's a personality trait, but sometimes I think we can think about resilience as a personality trait. What I would rather we shift to is it's a state that we can attain, right? This is something that we can, plan and attain. So using that, instead of just thinking about ensuring short-term operational continuity, like I'm just keeping my business open, really true resilience is the capacity to absorb the stress, recover functionally, and thrive in those new circumstances, right? Moving away from just simply risk management to how do we enable the upside? Again, that's sort of thriving under those new circumstances. So setting yourself up so that you not just are mitigating those risks, but you're enabling the upside. It's not just an operational consideration, but it's actually can be a strategic competitive advantage, right? So if you build resilience into your business and you're able to absorb those stress, recover, and look for the upside, that actually can become a competitive advantage for your business. And not to just think about it as narrow focus on just my business's ability to absorb stress and recover and those sort of things, but to remember that your business is an integral part of society. It's integrated into those systems. So sometimes we need to think about our business's ability to adjust and overcome within society's ability to adjust and overcome that adversity. So hopefully that we're going to kind of move into, I think my next slide is like, why is this so important for small businesses? I think, we've all heard these statistics that small to mid-sized businesses were more impacted by COVID-19 than other businesses. This is, and some of the theories and some of the research around this. One is a lot of small to mid-sized businesses were overrepresented in the sectors hit. So hotels, restaurants, those sort of things. So that is definitely a piece of that, that we, in this discussion, don't necessarily have as much control over. But the other ones I think are interesting because we do have a little bit of control over it as business owners. And I saw this with businesses that I worked with directly throughout the last couple of years, for sure. Small businesses are generally more financially fragile. And what I mean by that is they just often have less savings as far as to absorb those shocks. And so there's just not that same kind of cushion that large businesses have. And that is probably no big surprise here for anybody. Weaker supply chain capabilities. I think this is just a fancy way of saying you have smaller inventories, often the smaller networks, less bargaining. And so when that comes to being able to create more inventory, to leverage, discount prices, like if you're a restaurant owner and you only have one restaurant, you can't compete with the Subways who are bargaining on a bigger bases. And so they're going to get, as the prices go up, you have less bargaining in that world. A lot of, and this isn't everybody, but many of our small and mid-sized businesses lag behind in the digital uptake. And so what we saw are those businesses who really were maybe already kind of using technology, kind of experimenting with it and those sort of things. When the pandemic hit, they were able to adjust their businesses and people's new buying habits, the things that we all had to do for the public safety, really pushed us all online really quickly. And those businesses that were already kind of in that space were able to adjust a lot quicker, which meant more businesses who were not already in that space were left behind at a quicker pace. And then sometimes it's just staffing, right? Being able to adapt to a current situation quickly means that you need to have staff who can do that, or the people that you work with, to be able to help you make those changes really quickly. So that was my preamble to some of the things that I think are really common, and why I think this is so important. So what the next few slides and kind of really the rest of the presentation is to really look at some tools that are already out there, right? And the idea is that yes, you could go write a 40-page, crisis / what am I going to do in the next pandemic plan. My guess is you don't have time to do that, right? So instead, let's look at some commonly used business planning tools that can really help you sort of shift your thinking, and then how these tools can help think about the resilience in your business. So how many people are familiar with the business model canvas already? Just a raise of hands or a yes in the chat box. Have you used it? Have you been curious about it? Is there a quiet group pulling it out? Okay, I'm going to assume the business model canvas is totally new to all of you, because it's one of my favorite tools. It's a really great planning tool, and I'm gonna share this just short, like 2 or 3 minute video about what it is, and then I'm going to talk about not only how you can use it for just regular planning, but then just a short discussion on why I think it can also be a really great tool for quickly adapting, building in resilience into your business, and those sort of things. So with that, let me hit play. I think I turned the audio on, so fingers crossed. Can you hear?
This is the business model canvas. It's just what Beth and Carl will need to craft a powerful business model, and it can do the same for you. Let's dive in and see how it works. There are 9 essential building blocks that make up any business model. When you get all 9 blocks working together, you'll have answered the fundamental questions any business model must solve. We'll start here with customer segments. These are all the people or organizations for which you're creating value. For each segment, you have a specific value proposition. These are the bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. Channels describe through which touchpoints you're interacting with customers and delivering value. The customer relationships outline the types of relationships you're establishing with your customers and how you're acquiring and retaining them. Pricing mechanisms through which your business model captures value are documented under revenue streams. The key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model, so you can describe the infrastructure you need to create, deliver, and capture value. The key activities show which things you need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help you leverage your business model, since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor will you perform all key activities. And once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you'll also have an idea of its cost structure. Any business model can be mapped this way: 9 building blocks working to reinforce and strengthen each other. But before you make a model for yourself, it helps to see what a breakthrough business model looks like in action. Like this one. Low-cost airlines revolutionized air travel thanks to their disruptive business model. Let's first look at their value proposition. A low-cost airline offers ultra-cheap flights to their main customer segment, budget travelers, by adopting a no-frills policy. And this leads to additional revenue streams because customers pay for their ticket and additional fees on items like food and drink, priority boarding, and luggage. The airlines save even more money through their choice of channels, selling only through call centers and the internet, making for efficient, if not always convenient, customer relationships that are automated and often impersonal. Okay, that covers the right side of the canvas, the part everyone can see. The left side of the canvas is what's going on backstage. Like their choice of key resources, they reduce maintenance and training costs by using a single aircraft model for the whole fleet. And they only fly to cheap airports where it's cost efficient to land or where they even get paid to touch down. Planes that do land have quick turnarounds, so they get back in the air earning money as quickly as possible. And they form key partnerships with others in the travel industry, like car rental, hotel, and insurance companies. Finally, under cost structures, all maintenance, training, airport, and call center costs are trimmed to their lowest levels. All of these pieces working together make their fares almost impossible for traditional airlines to compete with. There's nothing superior about these airlines except their business models. They're reaching an entirely new segment of travelers out of reach for traditional airlines. Cutting out costs is pretty exciting, right? But wait, just because it's successful for discount airlines doesn't mean it will work for your idea. Luckily, the business model canvas allows you to iterate many models and test them quickly. Let's get started with your own business idea.
Okay, I've done entire classes on the business model canvas. It could take us the entire hour, but that's not really the point. So if you haven't really played with this model, I really want, you can go check out the Strategizer videos, which are great. We do some classes on it. It's a really great tool. And the reason, let's see, here we go. And why I think it can be really helpful when thinking about, being a resilient business is that businesses who can articulate these things. And so this isn't about asking you to go and write again a 40-page business plan so that you can understand what's going on. No, it's like throw some bullet points, use some sticky notes, walk through the business model canvas so that you really have mapped out what is your value proposition, who are your customers. And so that means that if things happen in your business, right, you can pick up that sticky note. Oh, the customer's need is changed. Maybe the value that I'm offering needs to shift, or maybe some of my key activities are being hurt. So you kind of have this dynamic tool at your disposal to really make some quick adjustments. I've also seen business owners, put this up in the wall in their office, or, when they talk to their employees as well, as a tool to kind of explain what it is as the business model. And so if your employees also know what it is, the value, the customers, kind of these building blocks of your business, you're going to be able to sort of talk through any shifts or, any sort of shocks that happen to your business and sort of have this as a place to come back to. There's cost structures and revenue streams down here. Unless you're actually starting up, I wouldn't say that this is a place where you need to worry about it for the purpose of using it if you're an already existing business. If you are a new startup business, there's different ways to use this tool and walk through it. I think it's a really great way for even for current business owners to get out of their head kind of like what is happening, what is going on. And so here is my main point about the business model canvas and how it connects is if you can understand your own building blocks and why they're important, you're going to be able to quickly adapt and be able to rearrange those blocks when you need to, or shift things within those. if you don't really understand these parts of your business, it's going to make it a little bit harder to be quick to adapt to those things. And this is a tool, and this is something that I think, you know, you could spend an hour on, kind of playing around with the business model canvas, kind of mapping some stuff out. You know, if you haven't done any business planning, you might end up spending a little bit more time on it. But if you've already kind of done some of your business planning, could just be a mapping tool that you can then set up, and you can be like, okay, this is a place to touch. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully those they've just got introduced to the business model canvas are excited about it, and we'll come back for some additional ways. In other workshops, I go through and we do whole sessions on just using it and sharing back how that went and all of that sort of stuff. So that can be really fun. If you're a business geek, which I'm assuming most of you are, because you're here in this webinar at what is this, 8:56 in the morning. Another tool that I think a lot of business owners have familiarity with, but probably don't use as often as if they could, is the SWOT analysis. And I really do think the SWOT analysis is a little bit more of a risk management tool. A lot of people use it, but I think it can really be used in resilience planning, not just as a risk management, which is part of what you want to be doing, but also to be able to shift your thinking, especially when you're looking at things outside of your control, right? So for those that have not seen the SWOT analysis tool, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and finding those in your business. So strengths and weaknesses are things that, like I like to say, that are under your roof. So these are things you have control over. Maybe I'm a solo entrepreneur and I am really good at marketing. Like I've got, the graphic skills. I'm really great at, getting out there and thinking about how to message things, but I'm really bad at the financials. Those are things that are kind of within my control. Outside of my control are sort of what's happening out in the environment, right? That there are rules and regulations that change, right? So an opportunity, might be an opportunity / threat. I think Uber is kind of an example of like a technology. Technology can be a threat or an opportunity. Uber tried to sell their company first to taxi companies, right? And those taxi companies didn't see it as an opportunity, and they also didn't see it as a threat, right? So in the end, being able to kind of look outside of what you do and how you think you do things to be able to see what's going on. And this could, like I said, rule changes that you have that you as a small mid-sized business, you don't have the lobbying power to go and change how a rule is going to, some new law is going to affect your business and it's going to increase, the minimum wage, right? That can be an opportunity or a threat, depending on how you sort of think about it, but you can change that threat and be like, okay, well, I can, by paying more, I'm increasing my employee satisfaction, and kind of like think about it and shift it into an opportunity. I think I'm just rambling at this point, but so instead I want to get to this little slide. And so I just want to give everybody, you guys aren't a super engaged group this morning, but maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute to kind of do your own quick SWOT analysis. So thinking about, for you in your business, what are your strengths? What are tangible assets you have? What's your strengths? Bullet point those down. Over here off to the side. What weaknesses? What does your organization do poorly? What do your competitors do better? Are there processes that need improvement? Right? Opportunities. What does your organization have? What are some unique strengths? You know, are there emerging needs for your product and service? Maybe there's, you know, a current trend that's increasing. And threats. Are there competitors that you need to keep an eye on? What law, are there laws that are changing? Is are attitudes changing? Are trends changing in a negative way? So just take a minute and think about it. Right. And so this is I recommend that business owners just do this all the time. This is just a really great tool as far as really being able to look at your business with a realistic lens. And while, like I said, it is much more of a risk management tool, but like thinking about how you can not only limit those risks, but shift them to opportunities, right? Or shift those weaknesses to strengths. And so if we're always aware that they're out there and that they're, maybe this year I'm going to like focus on increasing my my own knowledge of financials, and maybe hiring a bookkeeper, maybe hiring, increasing my use of my accountant, whatever that might be, to sort of limit my risk. Because, during the pandemic, businesses who were not good at their financials or had a really good grasp on them, that was a real weakness. We'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but that really, a lot of the programs that were available for, support required that you submit financials and know what was going on, or, and if you couldn't do those really quickly, you kind of were put on the back foot of being able to submit for a lot of those opportunities. So as a business owner, if I would have already known that, I might have been able to kind of get some of that in order before the shock happened. Okay. This is my sort of like, don't go crazy on an operational outline or plan, but just dive a little deeper into it. Just, I'm trying to set out some things here in this presentation that I'm hoping take you an hour or two, right? And then you do regularly once or twice a quarter, except for the financials, which we'll get to. But like the idea that you have thought through some of these things. So, now we've talked about the business model canvas. We've kind of looked at our SWOT analysis a little bit, and maybe there's some things in there that we want to do. But just really looking at those key activities. And, usually, like if I'm Starbucks, I make coffee. So what happens if I can't make coffee? Right. So looking at the daily operations and like sales and logistics and like all the little, the pieces, and outline those so that you really understand how your business works. Again, if you're, a business owner and you're not looking to write a business plan because you're trying to get more capital or, some of these other things, this doesn't need to be something that is so shiny and polished that you can submit it somewhere. Absolutely not. This is really about a tool for you to be able to kind of look at what are the things that are happening in my business, and if these pieces, if I don't have certain people in those roles, what happens? What happens if I can't get a certain supply? What happens to my business? If I can't, there's just every business, and I don't know all of your businesses, but every business has a few key things that are going to be really crucial to you being able to actually deliver value to the customer. And so really being able to identify what those things are, so that if you have to make a decision or quick decisions on how things are coming together, or if you need to lay off staff, or if you need to make really hard decisions, that you can do it knowing the impacts that it will have on your business. And the other thing that I like to do, start to think about, and this is kind of pairs with some of the financial stuff we'll talk about, but start to think about how quickly you can expand or contract your operation, right? So part of this exercise is to be able to look at it and see where is the flexibility you have to contract if you need to, and expand if you can't, right? So we talked about resilience not just being about absorbing a shock, but being able to take advantage of shifts and changes. And some of that might be, what is your ability to expand, to really take advantage of something like that? So thinking about these puzzle pieces, as you might say, can allow you some of that insight into your own business. And so operations plans are things big businesses do all the time and think about, or if you're think about writing your business plan. This is a tool that is out there and you can like look at templates and all kinds of stuff. I'm not asking you to do the whole thing for the sake of this, just really just starting to think about it. And then for resilience, thinking about expand, contract, and what are the levers that I have available to me to make that happen quickly based on how my business is put together. Strategic planning-ish. You see a theme here? I want you to use these tools and I want to look at these tools, but I don't want to overwhelm you with these tools. So strategic planning, obviously, right, is this sort of like company purpose, vision, objectives, planning, what are your approach? What are your tactics? It's really sort of saying like, this year, I want to do X. That could be, I want to increase the number of clients I have. I want to reduce my overhead by X, like it's like a kind of a more narrow sort of strategic focus that you think is going to help your business. And this could be built off, this is what I, when I did my SWOT analysis, this is something that I saw, or this is, I put my business model canvas. The idea here is try to find your kind of like, what are you really focused on? And what are you focused on and why you're focused on it? Is this going to increase, your net income, those sort of things. So thinking about that, so that when things get bumpy, you'll have a touchstone to come back and say, am I on track? Is this helping or hurting my strategic focus? Or do I need to shift my strategic focus? That can also happen as well. But like what often happens is that in a crisis or in a situation, we sort of the routines are the first thing to go. And the next thing that we sort of have is like, what is and I think I have another slide that talks about this, but a rule of thumb, like what am I really trying to do? Or what is the value I'm trying to offer my customer? What are those? And having those in your back pocket is going to be able to allow you to adjust a lot easier. So that's my hope for you, is that you can kind of have a 1-2 year, this is what I'm trying to do with this business right now. And so that if some shocks happen to that business, which they will, hopefully not the pandemic, but, things happen, I think you're all, business owners. So things are coming at you all the time. This will help you, these are things that I hope help you stay centered and adjust to those. And then the last thing that I have is that you have to have a budget. Okay, you don't have to have a budget, but the reality is budgeting is really important. It brings together all of the other things that we really talked about here. As far as tools, most businesses, all of the things that we just talked about are sort of brought together in a financial story, right? If I am trying to put some, make some investments so my business is more resilient by doing more employee training, that story is going to be told in your financials, right? Okay, well, yes, this year I'm maybe making a little bit less, but the hope is that investment is putting a little bit of resilience into my business. Or I decided, based on, I think I've read some examples of, like if you're a hotelier in, Haiti, that, a business who invested in their, the generator and multiple Wi-Fi sort of connections and those things was actually more able to absorb the shocks of the fact that power was less reliable there and those sort of things. And so thinking about what kind of investments you want to make, you want to see those show up here. The other thing is, as I talked about that contract and expand, this is also where that story can be told. When can I see things that are not going the way that they're supposed to go already? And do I know what are the trigger points, right? So the idea here, right? Yeah, like there's some management decisions even outside of shock, right? Where it's like, maybe I need to take this item off the menu because it just cost me too much to make and I'm not making a lot of money on it. You can't tell that unless you're doing your financials. But there also is, how much money am I making to keep the lights on? And when do I need to contract that business in order to not end up in, a huge amount of debt? Or when can I expand that business? When does it make sense that I have enough income to be able to, or sales to expand that business? And those things, you're not going to know those things. Most business owners that I work with, they know that it kind of at a gut level. And a lot of business owners will operate off of a gut level on what they think their financials are. And I would say that 80% of the time they're right. It's not like it's not totally off by any means. It's just this tool gives you a lot more sort of assurances and having that. So having at least an annual budget that you track from this actual, what you had predicted or budgeted, and the difference every month can go a really long way. And I also just do entire classes on, what does that mean in these different the different sheets, right? And so if you don't know what a balance sheet, income statement, cash flow are, that's okay. But as a business owner, these are tools that are really important to being able to understand what's going on in your business. And I really recommend investing the time to understand that, because that's going to make you a more resilient business owner, because you're going to understand what's happening in your business. And I like this example here on cash flow, because like a lot of the main point is that we're trying to get to an accurate sort of cash flow analysis, is that you can see here there's like a cushion, right? Thinking about the bathtub, there's money coming, money coming in, money going out. And that the amount that I have in the bathtub is sometimes my ability to absorb shock, right? And be able to deal with things that are happening in my business that are not directly my inflows and my outflows, or that might impact my outflows and inflows. But if the tub is empty, I don't have a business. I can't keep things moving, right? So that's why it's so important, especially when you need to adapt to change. And then this is just the sort of final kind of thought here of, yes, what we just talked about is working on your business, not just in it. I think most, and for thinking about building in resilience into your business, it is an exercise on working on your business and not in it. Resilience planning, resilience thinking, building that in, and attaining that state can't happen unless you're working on it. If you're just working in it, you're not going to get to that place, or it's going to be harder to get to that place. And so, I think resilience, I really like this sort of, they're kind of, resilience is not just about like one thing. It's rather actually finding the balance between what is my organizational routines, what keeps my business going, what is like kind of the things that need to happen. When those start to break down, or there's shocks or things, what are the rules of thumb that I have that keep me kind of my focused? And then what is my ability to improvise after that? Right? But then have those tools so that I know if I, just decide to start selling things on, a new platform and just try it because I'm improvising, do I have the tools behind it to look at it and see if it's working? Where do I understand how improvisation will actually impact my business? So thinking that resilience is a balance of being able to move between those pieces quickly and understand what's happening. That brings me to Q&A. How did I do on time? Oh, you guys are a quiet group, so I think I'm on good as far as yeah. Oh yeah, and Vivian, you've got some great resource sheets. What questions do you guys have for me? None. It was all crystal clear. Do you think that, do you feel motivated to maybe just grab one of these tools and kind of play with it? And I think sometimes when people think about planning, they're kind of like, oh, I don't want to do any kind of planning. But the idea of having some extra reasons to do it, hopefully, maybe motivating, or some different ways to look at these tools and how they can kind of help your business.
I thought it was motivating, Dominique. I did have one question. Yes, if there was one tool or resource you would recommend people start off with or look at this week or sooner rather than later, what would you recommend?
I would really recommend. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that really recommend that it's the hardest of the tools, but I would say having a budget. Having a budget is a really great way to make sure that you understand and can make changes and adjust to things in a meaningful way. I see a question here.
Thank you.
Oh, Amy, do you want to tell us more about this?
Hi, yes, thank you so much for all the information. That was really, really refreshing to hear. And thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in while you were talking about the expenses and kind of like budgeting and all of that. I wanted to jump in to say that for Seattle Public Utilities green business program, a lot of Seattle businesses don't know that there's actually a lot of free resources that the city offers to small business owners, such as like these connecting business owners to organizations like Seattle City Light or Saving Water Partnership organizations that help they're geared towards small businesses to help them reduce those kind of everyday expenses that can accrue. So I was talking in the chat about these energy and water assessments that small business owners can often get for free, where the team would go out on site and kind of assess the electricity use and energy use, water use, all that, and give them actual free things that can help them lower their usage, which can make a big difference if you're talking about a brick and mortar store using these resources every single day. So yeah, that can totally just be a part of the budgeting and being a business owner, understanding where to connect with, who to connect with to save money on some things that can easily be taken care of.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I think finding those tools as well can be really impactful.
Yes. And I'll put my our contact in the chat if anyone's curious about what that looks like. And thank you, Vivian, for including those PDFs. Hopefully they were helpful to folks who have brick and mortar stores or are planning on to.
Yeah. And I think my last slide here is just that Business Impact Northwest is here to help. All of our sort of one-on-one coaching, a lot of our classes and trainings are all free and available to business owners. We have a few 7-week classes that are paid, but there's a lot of scholarship and opportunities in that. So please don't ever let that be a reason not to attend if you think it'll be useful. We also, our lending team does small business lending. So it's startup growth and lines of credit that you can get access to, especially if you're, you're not able to get a loan at a traditional bank or a credit union. That is the main mission of Business Impact Northwest Lending, is that sort of intermediate. It doesn't mean they can say yes to everybody, but it does mean that our lenders will squint a lot more. And so sometimes having access to capital is a huge part of being able to be resilient. So
Domonique, it looks like we have one more question in the chat.
yeah.
Did any small businesses wow you with their resiliency or business planning during the pandemic? Is there anyone that comes to mind? That question comes from John Malding.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one of some of the businesses and stories I saw, one that I thought was really well thought out and smart was there is a collective of businesses for home delivery, a lot of home delivery places, but not only did this business sort of say, okay, let's get together these mission-oriented product businesses and get food product businesses and do some delivery, but they also recognized when it didn't work for them anymore. And so I think they did a delivery business for 2 years and realized that it wasn't the right, and it worked in the pandemic when everybody was buying everything online and wanted to get those things, and then adjusted that model back and restricted that model again when that was, it's not that all delivery stuff went out, but that it wasn't right for them anymore. And they said, nope, okay, we're going back to business as usual and going back to the things that we were doing before. And why I bring that up is that I think that to me, that's that able to sort of expand and contract and be flexible in your model and understand your business, your customers, because you are closest to your customers. And if your customers are saying yep, I'm here, get it to me, great. And if they kind of then they decide, nope, not anymore, being able to be okay, before we lose more money on this, we're shifting back to this other model that we knew that worked. And that was the collective of the Patty Pan and New Day and businesses that I saw do that. And I know that's not the normal story, oh, they just blew it up in the pandemic and did all kinds of crazy stuff. But I think it shows the ability to adapt on both sides of it, which I think is really important for, small businesses. I saw a lot of restaurants get really creative. I think we all saw that. So.
Well, thank you for that insight, Dominique. Yeah, I guess it's the name of the game these days, just being able to pivot. It's really important to be resilient.
Right. Being able to adapt those things into your business model.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, then I am going to go ahead and close this out for this session. I did want to take another second to say thank you again to our event sponsors, Business Health Trust, Reach, King County, and Seattle Public Utilities. Thank you so much, Dominique, for this great presentation. I think you left us with a lot to reflect and think about. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. I hope that you have one takeaway that you can work on this week or in the upcoming month to make your business more resilient. I would also like to go ahead and thank our small business champions, Kaiser Permanente, Boeing, JLL, Puget Sound Energy, and Amazon. And I want to say thank you, Dominique. This has been really great working with you in Business Impact Northwest. I'll be sure to share Business Impact Northwest's information out with the group when I send a follow-up email. And then one last quick plug for the Chamber. If you enjoyed the program today and want to get more involved with what we're doing, you can visit our website at seattlechamber.com to either become a member or check out the great events we have coming up this spring. So thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you have a great day.
Right.